how do you name your product or service? But more importantly, how do you name your company? How do you name what you do? And is there any name that's going to stick in the customer's mind to help you get further along and maintain your traction? Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Sales Chatter. Today is book club day, and we're talking about positioning and how to the battle for your mind. So we've only got a couple of chapters left. Chapter 9 is the power of a name, and I got to tell you, kind of got uninterested in the book in this chapter. It was a pretty difficult chapter to get through. There was a I shouldn't say that. Yes, that is actually accurate. It was more difficult than other chapters to get through. So far this book has been pretty cool. I mean, it's got old context to it, but I just replaced the old context with new context, and we're good to go. But when it came to the name, I started thinking of this in reference to logistics, right? So like XYZ Logistics, they're a logistics company, right? Anything involved with like traffic or trucks or tech typically are in logistics companies. Um, I started really thinking about this, and then I started thinking of names like Convoy, right? So the old school convoys of trucks, and I started saying, well, yeah, names actually do matter. I know a couple of companies that, the name is kind of like how you mold things together, right? Which is pretty cool. Then I look at, naming our companies, I look at high performance logistics sales, and I look at, of course, Bridger, right? Bridger sales system. It's the system we've used to bridge the gap between that desire and that vehicle to get you there. So it's pretty cool when you're thinking of names. One thing that I did take from the chapter that I'd like to kind of put out to all of you is the idea of naming what you do. And I never really put this as, the power of a name, but I more put it as how do we, and we've talked about this, I think last week, where we, create a blue ocean instead of a red ocean, right? So everybody's in this red ocean of salespeople calling prospects. And what if, and this is something maybe for you to try. I'm going to be testing it out in the next couple of weeks, seeing how it works. And what it is it's a give your service a name. So like it would be, so something super simple, and I kind of paused the recording here because I wanted to think about this. And so I came about come to something kind of simple, and this would be something I guess you'd have to think through. But what about like if you're shipping out of California, right? And California is your niche market. Um, you know, Coastal carrier, or no, what we do is we offer a coastal move package, and I know these are so lame, but I don't know, my brain's not working this morning. It must be a Friday or something, I don't know. But come up with a catchy name that names your product, right? um like, for example, when I started, and I started thinking through my own logistics career, and like, how did I name things, or how did I put things into a manner in which it would be kind of catchy and being able to stick out, right? And one of the things I've done, and it was more um, an acronym, and I turned it into a sales process, and then I started calling the sales process the ICB function. And so what I did is I started saying to logistics managers, traffic managers, well, we have an ICB function in my department. We don't run freight. We enhance your image, credibility, and brand through freight. So the ICB was an image, credibility, and brand function. So that was kind of the function I would say would be put in front of the freight, right? And I would explain it to a prospect like, we freight is the end result of what we do, right? There's so many more pieces of the freight. So what we do is we have an ICB function, an image, credibility, and brand function that is the nucleus of everything we do. So that ICB function needs to be filled out. So what we do, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, is we go through a specific questionnaire so I can understand your ICB. And so what I'm doing is I'm selling image, credibility, and brand, and I'm selling that name of ICB function, which is kind of taking them out of the realm of freight. So that's really where my mind went with this. Now, if any of you are reading this book, Positioning, and you see something different, please let me know in the comments below. But for me, it kind of started to become that process, right? I mean, if you're working for a company, you can't name the company, it's already named. If you are opening up your own company, like we did with Bridger, gosh, we went through probably 140 different names, and just looking at it and saying, okay, how does it mend with the brand? How does it mend with our idea? What is the domain like? I know a lot of people talk about 5-letter domains and how important they are. And if you're watching and you're not a business owner, think of this for yourself as well, right? Because we're in the age in the world where I truly am starting to see that if you don't have a web presence, you don't exist. And what I mean by that is I still to this day encourage every salesperson in logistics to just put up a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 page website of themselves, what they do, what they believe in, how they believe in it, and post content to social media, but also pin it. Like if you're doing YouTube videos, pin those videos to your website. I think this is, in my opinion, is one of the best things you can do. You can utilize a ton of different stuff. Like, for example, if your company is not utilizing AI and the functionality and the API functionality, learn it, put it on your website, and have people communicate with your website while you're making sales calls. So now you've got lead generation building on one end while you're building lead generation on the other. Like, all these things are out there for us to take advantage of. The thing is, you got to do the research, you got to figure out what works, what doesn't, and then amplify and kind of release that. But that's a whole other topic, and if you're interested, put some notes down below, and I'll definitely do a podcast on that and do a video on that. So for me, it's the power of a name. So what I would suggest when it comes to, long story short, I know I've been rambling for a little bit now, almost 10 minutes, but the idea is I see it as, anyways, when you're marketing or selling yourself, create a name for what it is you do. And it's not just sales, like you're an ABC methodologist, or whatever creative thing you come up with based on your business. You know, um, gosh, you can, if you do road salt, you can do a salt master process. Where you take them through a master process to enhance their business because it's salt, and salt is this kind of product. If you're, like I said, if you're doing produce, you can do a PDC, a produce development connection, where we develop multiple angles of produce and bring them all together and maybe pool distribute it. And you know what I mean? Like, there's all sorts of different things that you can do. But I'm kind of jumping around here because I kind of only had that thought about, my business, and how did I actually name things and not even realize I named them for that kind of separation factor. And really, this is what I see this chapter all about, is putting a name down that separates you from everyone else. And they were saying, like, things like Newsweek and Esquire magazine and all these different articles and publications that don't really talk about what you do, right? So the name kind of is that what you do, right? And hence the reason one of my major courses is Inception. Now, of course, you've probably all seen Leonardo DiCaprio's movie Inception. I named it Inception because Inception is the beginning. It's the introduction of something. So it's the inception of an idea. And the way the program works is it's the inception of this new way of selling that eliminates burnout, that keeps you in the game, and that keeps you motivated and consistent, right? So I named it Inception because of that. See, I hadn't read this book then. I just thought, what's a pretty cool name for a course? What does it do? And I started thinking through what the results of the course were. See, and this is where I think we should all focus when it comes to naming something. So if your product has an X result, then like take that as the nucleus of the name, right? In Bridger, when we were building Bridger, when we were going through, like we were going through gosh, I mean, we went through, I pretty much went through every letter of the alphabet and tried to come up with funky names for it. At that time, ChatGPT was, I guess, was in like a certain mix. It wasn't public like it is now. So I couldn't type in, here's what it does. Give me like a million creative names, which is probably a pretty cool thing for you to do right now. Just, go to ChatGPT, use 3.5 or 4 turbo if you're paying for it, and, go in whatever. But we didn't. So we came up with all sorts. We went to, I scoured the internet and I just said software companies, and I was looking at names of software companies, and I was changing parts of them, and did it match and did any. And then something happened, and I believe I was speaking to, gosh, I forget which one of my partners I was speaking to. Um, but the idea of, I used to draw this picture when I was doing training, and all of it was, you're here, you're top of the mountains here. You need to build this bridge to get there. And part of this bridge, and I would put pieces going off each side of the bridge, and they would be training steps or learning levels or, processes that would get the customer to the top of the mountain. And I kept going, referring to this bridge the gap, bridge the gap. So we thought, oh my God, we're building that vehicle to take a salesperson from where they are to where they want to be and give them every tool in that vehicle. That's the bridge. So that's where the name Bridger came from. Now, the idea is anytime you hear Bridger or Bridger sales system, it's going to connect that you're bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to be in sales, right? So that name worked with that product, right? When I was creating my training company, I was thinking of all these different names, and it came down to high performance logistics sales, which is a huge name for a company. So I crushed it to HPLS. Now, if you don't know of high performance logistics sales, HPLS will mean nothing to you, right? So it's that was probably not a very good name, but in the name, it tells you everything about what the company does. It produces high performing logistics sales reps, right? So it goes, but could I have made a catchier name, right? And this goes into things even more, right? Like, so for example, I'm sure you've seen the Doritos commercial where they say, like, we don't even need to put our name on our bags anymore. They just do that kind of, the triangle looking chip, and everyone knows it's a Dorito, right? But if you look at the name Doritos, what is that? Like, so like some of these iconic logos and names don't follow this process. Like, what is it? I don't know what a Dorito is. What's a Lay's, right? Like, I don't know. It has nothing to do with chips. Even how, what's a Humpty Dumpty, right? I don't know. I probably just aged myself there, but I don't even know if Humpty Dumpty is around anymore. But, these kind of things. So I kind of on this flip flop with this chapter. I do know the connection to the result is kind of the way I looked at naming everything whenever I was looking at naming something. Connection to the result is maybe the way I would suggest that you start naming some of your processes. And the reason I say name some of your processes is because you can use this in your own personal marketing, right? An acronym, like a letter, right? Like we have a load guarantee on inception, right? And every letter of load, which we all know in logistics, a truckload, a load of freight. So we use that kind of as an acronym for a load guarantee. So it's just these different processes to think through, just different ways of us sitting down and going, yeah, that makes sense. No, that doesn't make that makes sense. That's good, and kind of going from there, right? So that's what this chapter was all about. I hope. I feel like I've been rambling a little bit, but I hope it's provided you some value. Um, they even go into things like when to use coin names, when negative names can be positive, bringing the product out of the closet. Again, there is some cool things that go into the fact of names of people, which is a really wild one for me. They actually did a study. Two psychology professors did a study in an elementary school, and and let me just my glasses on here. So yeah, they did it with two popular names, David and Michael, and two unpopular names, Hubert and Elmer. Now, they gave these what did they give them? Hold on. Compositions to elementary grade school teachers. And they found in this study, without a shadow of a doubt, and I think it was 3%. I'm just trying to get the exact. Yeah. So more than 5% less and they were the same compositions that they gave. Elmer and Hubert, teachers from past experience, say the professors, that Hubert or an Elmer is generally a loser. So they got um, less a lesser grade than they would have, just because they're typically losers. So it's that perception, and the reason they're telling us about this study is because they're saying the perception of a name can actually increase or decrease the status of the company, the product, or whatever it is, right? And think of it like this: um, the status of a name, right? First one that comes to mind for me is Apple, right? The status of Apple. Now, I'm a huge Apple user. Everything I have is Apple, right? I also think there's some issues with Apple when it comes to you know, cross-platform information, this kind of stuff. I also found that when if I don't know for all of you, but if you use Apple and you send invites out through your Apple Mail, like through the actual mail system on a Mac or on any iOS, um, it actually doesn't register properly in Outlook. So there's issues with some functionality. But anytime you say Apple, you think superiority, you think great products, you think innovation, you think because that's the way they designed it. So they've created the name to be synonymous with this amazing features, great products, last forever. I can tell you, my first MacBook, I think lasted me 8, 9 years. Like it was that thing was just a beast. I'm hoping the new stuff lasts as long and it doesn't but so I mean that makes sense to me but Apple, right? When you look at the origin of the name and you look at what it meant, right? Microsoft, software, Microsoft, right? So they're making software smaller where you're now able to get it in a disk instead of having to install a hard drive this big, right? Apple wasn't really Apple's a fruit. It's not a computer company, but now it is. But when you see, so this is what they were saying. We're opposite names can Apple. What is that? Like, what is Apple? And then also the logo with the bite out of the apple, right? So it's pretty cool. I mean, when you start diving into it and start really talking through it, it opens up some new ideas and strategies. Because I had no idea that I was going to be 20 minutes now on this show. I thought this was going to be like a 5 minute show because when I read the chat there, I was like, yeah, I got the, ICB, but that's about it. And now as I'm speaking, all these other ideas are popping into my head. So hence I'm bringing up, I had no idea to do that last night. So anyways, pretty cool chapter for y'all. I rambled a little bit today, I apologize, but hopefully my hammy from over the hedge moments are helping you get to where you need to go. So my friends, in closing for this week, go out there every day, make every call educational, and crush your sales. And we'll see you on Monday morning.